It's Hettwer. This is my audience, and this is speech number 2, or speech number 3, actually, now. Um, Alright, I'll just begin. Smallpox, polio, and diphtheria. Most listening to this right now only know this in the context of a history book. You can thank this lack of first-hand knowledge to the fact that most of you were vaccinated at a young age. As someone who doesn't skip his flu shots, I know firsthand on this procedure. Vaccinations are some of the most powerful tools in both medicine and society that we possess. Throughout this speech, I will cover the history and advancement of vaccinations, how they work, and the effects on society. The natural starting point of this is the history and advancement of vaccinations. It's nothing new to have the thought of immunizing yourself from something that you can't see. In A Brief History of Vaccines, written in collaboration at the University of Auckland, as early as 1000 CE in China, people were infecting themselves with cowpox in hopes to be immune to the much more virulent and deadly smallpox. Much later on in history, modern vaccinations came about. In A History of Vaccines, written in collaboration at the College of Physicians of Philadelphia, the first vaccination was created by Edward Jenner, much like the way the Chinese did in 1000 CE. He used cowpox to vaccinate against the much more lethal smallpox. This kicked off the practice of vaccinology, and late in the 1800s and early 1900s is where we got the vaccinations for most of the infectious diseases that we're vaccinated against today. Now that we know the progress, I'll explain how they actually work. The difference between vaccinations, it's pretty minute, and the concept is the same between most all of them. Vaccinations actually don't fight the pathogen, they just teach your body how to fight. In Understanding How Vaccinations Work, written by the CDC, I think it's explained pretty well. Vaccinations simply form memory in your body. Normally, when you're introduced to a pathogen, your immune cells absorb it and create a memory of it. But this does take a while, and if the pathogen is nasty enough, the damage is already done by the time it learns how to fight back. So in vaccinations, they introduce a weakened form of the virus so your body can fight it back without threat of actually dying. So when your body is then introduced to the actual pathogen later, it wastes no time attacking it, and you're at much less risk of actually dying from the disease. Now that we know how vaccines protect us, the natural question is, how well do they actually protect us? Immunization has affected society greatly since its conception. The first and most important factor of this is in its protection of human life. In a giant data compilation compiled by UNICEF of Australia, it was calculated that since the year 2000, even with our modern antibiotics and lower prevalence of disease, it is estimated that over 2.5 million are saved yearly from vaccinations. In addition to that, since 1988, it is estimated that over 99% of polio cases have been reduced. That leads me to my second visual. This is a 4-foot tall 2x4, and it represents the number of cases of polio in 1988. The cases in that year, again from UNICEF of Australia, was 350,000. In comparison, this toothpick, the height of it, represents the number of cases of polio on the planet in the year 2014. That's to scale. Vaccination also has very large economic benefits. It does this in two ways. The first way is it's often cheaper to vaccinate someone than treat them for a disease. And the second is sick people can't work, so it increases productivity sharply. In a CDC report written by Dr. Cynthia G. Whitney, it was estimated that just between the years 1994 and 2013, From vaccinating its citizens, the US saved over $1.6 trillion. Now that the effects are known, I can recap on what I've spoken on today. Vaccines are one of the greatest tools that we have in both medicine and society as a whole. Through speaking, I visited on the history and advancement of vaccinations, how they work, and how they've affected society as a whole. In modern day, many of the horrible illnesses that we once feared are now confined to the pages of a textbook, waiting to be joined by more. All right. My wonderful audience, one more time.